Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? Well, we've been building up to this for a couple of weeks. Well, this and what comes next. We've spent a little bit of time looking at some of Thanos' early adventures and the death of Thanos last week. And now we're moving on to Thanos' resurrection and the biggest scheme that they ever used Thanos for, at least until I stopped reading comics. We're looking at the THANOS quest today. So just before we get into it, if you enjoy the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, go subscribe to my Patreon. Links are in the description. Gives you early access to everything I do. Helps out the channel. Helps to buy new comics. So to address the obvious first, this is not the original editions that were released for the THANOS quest. It just comes down to a simple matter of economics. I mean, I really would have liked to get them, but to get the both of them probably would have cost me like $75 versus what was essentially a $6 trade, I think, maybe $8. And it's like, okay, I really can't argue with that math. But we will still get to look at the covers in this, so that's cool. So let's do a quick recap on who's Thanos. Nobody knows who Thanos is, right? Let's go over that. Thanos was born on Titan when he was growing up. During his studies, he grew to love Mistress Death. This was based off of Jim Starlin's old psychology courses he took when he was in college about the concept of Thanatos. And as he grew older, his lust for power became insatiable, really, where he was determined to become the consort of death. So in order to do that, he was going to need an incalculable amount of power, essentially. And he decided to go about doing that first by building himself up by using science, mysticism, and his own willpower to increase his already pretty expansive power base. And from there, he gathered a whole bunch of space scum to him to act as his army and used them to go and invade worlds. That was how he got his start. That, of course, was defeated eventually. So his next scheme was to go after the Cosmic Cube, which effectively turned Thanos into a god. The Cosmic Cube acts as kind of a genie's lamp. That try was also defeated by Captain Marvel and the Avengers, so his scheme after that, which was the one we went over last couple of weeks, was to craft a synthetic soul gem based off of the existing soul gems and use the power of that to fly around extinguishing suns or making them go nova. And he did at least do one. After he was successful in that, he came to our solar system with the intent of blowing up our sun, and he was stopped again by the combined efforts of the Avengers, Captain Marvel, Adam Warlock, Spider-Man, and the Thing. And at the end of that particular adventure, Thanos was killed by Adam Warlock. He was turned to stone. He was turned into a living statue, but he did die while in that form and wouldn't be seen again in the Marvel Universe until 1990. So in 1990, Jim Starlin was going to be writing a stretch of the Silver Surfer comic book. And he had an idea for a storyline, which he pitched to Tom DeFalco, where Thanos would be revived and would go searching for the Soul Gems. Because the Soul Gems were also mentioned earlier in the Silver Surfer comic book, somewhere around like 15 or something. And Thanos was so dead and so far out of the picture in the Marvel Universe that when he proposed this to Tom DeFalco's response was, "Who's Thanos?" And this is Tom DeFalco, who started working at Marvel in like 82, 83, and by 87 was the editor-in-chief. He had no idea who this character was because nobody had ever used him. Nobody has really used Thanos at this point except for Jim Starlin. So he gives the okay for the storyline, and it's a pretty long storyline to start with. It starts in Silver Surfer number 34, in which the Silver Surfer falls asleep, and he has a vision of Death and some of her minions bringing Thanos back to life. Because Death is concerned that the balance of life and death in the universe is getting out of whack. Life is starting to outstrip death by too far of a margin. So she's decided to bring back her most devoted follower, which is Thanos. She provides him a new body, and Thanos vows to kill half of the universe in her name. I'm doing this by fucking with the Silver Surfer. There's a fun issue right after this, I think it's 35 or 36, where Thanos basically asks the Silver Surfer to accompany him as he makes some rounds and explains his point of view. And it's essentially the point of view that's presented by the Infinity War movie, where Thanos is all worried about resources and overpopulation and pollution and this kind of shit. And that all turns out to be just manipulation to mess with the Silver Surfer. He's messing with the Surfer in particular because when he was resurrected, he was warned that there was one being that would be the greatest obstacle to overcome on his path to serving death, and that was the Silver Surfer. So when he's going around to these worlds, what he's actually doing is he's taking the Surfer with him, who, of course, from years of flying through space, has all sorts of cosmic radiation in him. He's got germs, he's got bacteria, and he's visiting planets that have no immunity to those. So it ends up actually killing off the majority of the population on those planets. It's kind of a fun issue, actually. And he quickly realizes that he doesn't have nearly the power he needs to actually accomplish the task that has been set before him. So Thanos is going to have to find something equal to, or more likely more powerful than, the cosmic cube. And that's where this particular story is going to begin. So Thanos' search for power was supposed to take place solely in the Silver Surfer comic book, over I think a year and a half or something. But Marvel had just been bought by some company or somebody who felt that any kind of big storyline involving their properties had to be exploited to the maximum. So you get a big story like this where Thanos is on a quest for supreme power and he's going to have to be dealt with. And they wanted a separate series, Prestige Edition. This is 2 issues and it's its own thing. So that's what we ended up getting. So let's get into this. Starting with the cover, I don't even know if we need to talk about this cover. This cover sucks. But this is a cheap trade edition that basically, if you're not familiar with what's going on in the Infinity Gauntlet, or you want to quickly read the events that happened just before it, you can go and buy this thing, and it's not going to cost you too much. And hey, now I know the story. But yeah, this cover blows. Just a shot of your guy standing there, looking all mad and computer colored. I'd be mad too if I was computer colored. And inside they give you an ad for how else you can buy the Thanos Quest, which doesn't seem the best way to advertise, but maybe that's just me. And this is referencing the cover to Silver Surfer number 50. Better cover concept, at least. Although that Surfer looks like shit, because the Surfer on the original is embossed, and it feels like they took that directly instead of the drawing that it was based off. That's pretty bad. At least Thanos looks good. We also get a little introduction by Ralph Macchio, who was an editor at Marvel. And now we get the Thanos Quest itself. So this was the original cover of Thanos Quest number 1. That's a pretty good cover, at least. This is going to be drawn by Ron Lim, who doesn't have the chops, really, of a guy like Jim Starlin. Doesn't have the imagination, but he's solid. And he has his own recognizable style. So that's going to have to be good enough in this case. So this is going to be Thanos and the guys he's going up against in this particular issue. Okay, another trade on Thanos that you can buy. This is a better drawing, at least, although it's still kind of a boring cover. This is like venturing on Liefeld territory for cover design. Oh well. Yeah, Marvel doesn't seem to get tired of trying to exploit the success of the Infinity War movie, which I can understand. He's one of the few bankable properties they have, or at least had, after the Infinity War movie. But I'm not a fan. I think that's a great way to make your readers sick of your one huge villain. Okay, so we're going to start things off with a big kind of empty splash page. It's just Thanos on his Metron chair. Because, of course, the original design of Thanos, Jim Starlin was reading a lot of New Gods, and he was really digging it. And he based the first design of his character on the character Metron. So I think that's what this is that, he decided, he's got to have his own cool chair too. Before, I think it was Roy Thomas told him, if you're going to steal one of the New Gods, steal the good one and make him look more like Darkseid. But not the best opening splash, maybe, but that's okay. Oh, that's more of a front piece. Okay, that's fine. And Infinity Gauntlet trade. We'll cover that next week. All right, so we open things up. This is the proper opening splash. This is Thanos contemplating the task that's been set before him to go and kill half of all life in the universe. So to do this, he's gone to commune in the Infinity Well. I'm not sure where the Infinity Well comes from. I'm sure it's something that showed up before this. This is the first time I'm reading anything about it. It seems to be something that expands the mind, that sort of thing. And they give us a quick rundown on exactly how that works. And the art here is fine, which is how a lot of the art in this volume is kind of going to go. It's good enough, nothing particularly spectacular. So Thanos is contemplating his task when he gets approached by the Avatar of Death. This is the person who speaks for Death because Death never speaks. And Death is wondering why he isn't going about his appointed task. And he explains, well, if I can, absolutely, with the power that I've got. And I will eventually be successful, but it will take centuries or perhaps millennia. So the Avatar summons Thanos back to Mistress Death's presence, where he explains this in person. And Death seems a little bit unconvinced that this is Thanos' intentions, that maybe he's looking for a way to welch out of the deal, or has ambitions beyond just being Death's equal and providing her this incredible service. So Thanos explains himself. He explains that he's going to be going after the 6 soul gems, which he renames in this particular volume as the Infinity Gems, because, of course, one of the gems is the soul gem proper and controls that aspect of reality, which is that it can control people's intentions, their souls. So he's going after all of the Infinity Stones and, presents this to her as a proposition. She kind of hesitates a minute. So Thanos has to tell her, the first guy I'm going up against is the In-Betweener, which apparently the In-Betweener has recently affronted Death through his actions. And the In-Betweener is like a celestial being. And that's enough to get Death on board with the plan. So Thanos is off, he summons his Metron chair, and he goes on his quest. So he's going through different planes of reality to go find the In-Betweener. He tells us a little bit about the background of the In-Betweener while he goes. So as I said, the In-Betweener is like a celestial being of immense power who has recently affronted Death and has also pissed off Lord Chaos and Master Order, who we saw in Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 2, actually, and is currently their prisoner. So Thanos is going to have to go and see if he can release the In-Betweener. And the whole idea for this book, I feel like it's based a lot off of what happened in Avengers Annual number 7, because there was a quick 6-panel sequence in that issue. It took up like a third of the page, where Thanos told about how he found each of the Infinity Stones originally, and that was how he was able to construct his synthetic gem. And it sounded like a fun adventure. The only problem, of course, is that we didn't really get to see it. We just heard him tell us, yep, no, got this one here, got that one there. So the conceit for this one is we're going to see Thanos as he goes on his quest, traveling through different planes of reality and getting his physiology just stretched to what would normally obliterate any normal person. But of course, he's Thanos. He was already extremely powerful before he enhanced his own power. So Thanos enters the realm of chaos and order, which are represented by the Nexus of Reality here, which is a cool shot. We're going to get some pretty big panels in this book and, not too few splash pages, which is nice. Because this is big cosmic action, which Jim Starlin does at least as well as anybody else. I wouldn't be surprised if at least some of this he's providing thumbnails or breakdowns for Ron Lim, because apparently he did that a fair bit on the Infinity Gauntlet for George Perez. Didn't go too well. And this is the In-Betweener who's being held captive, kind of the on this little slab of rock in the middle of space at the 2 points of these gigantic energy ziggurats or something. And he's got all these little goblin wardens around him who are not really any kind of deterrent for Thanos. And he just eliminates them with one big blast. That's kind of a classic Ron Lim shot. So, Thanos has a talk with the In-Betweener, who's wearing his gem on his brow here, much like Adam Warlock did with his. And a few of the others will over the course of the book here. And Thanos is offering to break the In-Betweener out of his prison. The In-Betweener is like, why would you ever want to do that? I know who you are. So Thanos is like, well, then you know my usual deal, which is that I'm in love with Mistress Death. And I need to get the fuck away from her. I need to be able to rise up against Mistress Death and shake off her influence, and then I need to have the power to hold her at bay if she gets vengeful. And the way he explains it to the In-Betweener, he figures if he breaks out the In-Betweener will owe him a favor, essentially, and will help him out in this particular plan. So the In-Betweener is like, sure, I can't do a whole lot from in here, though, and I can't destroy the cell that I'm in, this little bubble, with my own power. And Thanos is like, no, I get that. I can't destroy it from the outside either, but I figure if we both work in unison and hit it with everything we've got from both sides, that might shatter the bubble. So that's where they're going to start. They both do power blast from inside and outside of the bubble. It's all kind of standard Ron Lim power blasty stuff. And the bubble does eventually crack and explode. And at the end of it, the in-betweener's free. He says, how can I properly express my gratitude for your valiant efforts? How can I thank one who has betrayed death in order to save me? Moreover, how could I ever trust such a traitor? And he's going to use his powers on Thanos, except they don't work. Thanos takes a big swing, knocks him on his ass, and steals the gem from the in-betweener's brow. And he explains the whole deal, which is basically that where they are right now, the nexus of reality is the place where chaos and order bond. So there are no dichotomies, which is how the in-betweener gets his power, which is why basically he wasn't able to do anything to Thanos. In-betweener's like, but my powers worked inside the bubble. And Thanos is like, yeah, because Lord Chaos and Master Order were being nice. They probably won't be now that you've broken out, so have fun with that. And gets on his Metron chair, and he takes off. And at that point, Chaos and Order show up. And yeah, they're going to be a little harsher with the in-betweener going forward. So Thanos now has had his first victory. He's got his first of the Infinity Gems. And this one in particular is one that he's wanted for a while. This is the Soul Gem, which did used to sit on Adam Warlock's forehead. And he muses on that for a minute. There's a fair bit of musing in this comic. It's got to be like 248-page issues, I think. Something like that. And while he's musing, Mistress Death shows up with her avatar because she overheard the conversation, of course, between Thanos and the In-Betweener, where Thanos claimed that he chafed under Mistress Death's yoke. And she's like, is that true? And he's like, no, of course not. I just said that to help him, to get him out of the cell so I could steal his gem. This is the plan. Mistress Death takes a second and goes, okie dokie, and then she disappears. And Thanos confirms one of his suspicions, which is that Mistress Death is watching him very closely while he goes about his quest. So Thanos goes to the planet Tamarata, which is where another celestial being is. This is mostly Thanos chasing down celestial beings. This one is called Champion, and basically he's found himself on a world that is constantly at war. It's at like the nexus of 5 different empires, and is constantly being battled over for its strategic value. And Champion is here because Champion's not smart, he just wants to punch constantly. And with the gem, he's able to be constantly victorious. So he's got this endless supply of soldiers who are all looking for a fight, and Champion just always throws himself in the middle of things, beats everything up, and goes, ha-ha, I won, and then goes and finds his next fight. So Thanos arrives and issues Champion maybe the only kind of proposition he could understand, which is, I'm looking for the best fight I can find. Champion accepts his challenge, takes a big swing, which Thanos dodges, grabs his hair, and then the big swing back. And I mean, Thanos isn't exactly a slouch himself when it comes to a power level, but he's still got to try and avoid as many hits as possible because, of course, the stone on Champion's brow is the Power Stone. So Champion is fueled by limitless power. And he kind of does like classic big guy pratfall stuff where he just charges at Thanos. Thanos matadors out of the way and he smashes into a mountain which collapses on him. He easily breaks out of that, so Thanos unleashes his full power blasty stuff, which is the kind of thing you can't possibly really show in a movie and have it make any kind of sense. Like, how do you represent these globes around the hands, If it's light, it shouldn't exactly stop right there, should it? But it's all kind of based off things like Kirby Crackle. So yeah, blasts a Champion. Champion, of course, is originally knocked down, but gets back up and just starts coming at Thanos. This is a fun little progression. And is the unstoppable force. And then, of course, Thanos cuts off the beam when Champion gets a little too close. So Champion stumbles because he's been bracing himself. Thanos is able to smack him again. Champion comes back at him once more. Thanos puts some invisible shields up, force fields. And that's some fun stuff as well. These pages, it feels like Ron Lim's putting a little bit more into. Maybe this is particularly fun to draw. It feels like it. Champion keeps hammering on Thanos' force field. And he's all pissed off that Thanos won't just engage him in a stand-up fight, which he would absolutely win. And when he's weak in the shield, he goes for his big coup de grace, his finishing move, by doing a big leap up into the sky, and then coming down on Thanos. And Thanos has time to muse to himself, holy shit, these super people are stupid. And when Champion is approaching Thanos, Thanos, of course, teleports out of the way. So tectonic plates getting shifted, eruptions going off all over the surface, and eventually results in the planet exploding. Not a great shot. I'd like to have seen them try something a little better on that, but I don't know how much time they had to complete this. There's aspects of this that feel like it's kind of rushed. Maybe not from a story perspective. The story is actually quite good. But from the art perspective, it's a lot of art if he's having to produce it fairly quickly. So at the end of it, Champion is floating in space, the fragments of the planet floating around him. And of course, he declares victory over the planet. And Thanos, of course, shows up on his Metron chair and goes, "Good job. So you've managed to destroy the planet we were fighting over and strand yourself in space in the process." Champion realizes what the deal is and quickly challenges Thanos for his chair. And Thanos is like, "Why would I ever do that?" And he's like, "For the honor of combat." Like, "Rubbish, I don't feel like fighting." And Thanos is like, "Anyway, it's been fun. Toodles." Champion's like, "Wait, you can't leave me here." Thanos is like, "Well, why not? I mean, you're immortal. Floating in space is not going to kill you. It might get pretty fucking boring over the millennia, but that's not my problem." And Champion begs him for his help, and Thanos is like, "Okay, fine, but I'm going to need something in return. I'm going to need the gem on your forehead." Because he can't really just take the gem. Even with the soul gem in his possession, there's a chance that Champion would be able to fight through that, maybe through sheer dumbness. Who knows? And if he gets a hand on Thanos, that's kind of it for him. So after a bit more posturing, Champion tosses Thanos his gems, saying, "Fucking thing never worked anyway." And Thanos, true to his word, does tow Champion to the nearest planet, and then drops him through its atmosphere, because he didn't say how he was going to drop him off there. So now Thanos is in possession of both the soul and the power gems. He's already probably one of the most powerful beings in the universe. But he's not done yet. Next, he's going to have a chat with an entity called the Gardener, who was in possession of one of the soul gems back when Thanos was first collecting them, or at least when he told us he was collecting them in Avengers Annual number 7. And we're just going to get a little bit of backstory about the Gardener here, and why he kind of separates himself from the rest of his race, the Elders, and how he's just focused on building his beautiful garden here. And they have just, a nice little chat. Thanos is conversational. This is one of the nice things about this story. Yeah, you get some big fight stuff every once in a while, but a lot of it is actually just Thanos trying to find different solutions for each gem, which is nice. So in this case, the Gardener is aware of what Thanos has been doing, and he's not going to surrender his Infinity Gems. So they're at a bit of a standstill. And he feels that he has the upper hand. So he uses his Soul Gem to... It seems like the Gardener, his whole ability is to control plant life, where he can accelerate its growth and get it to do what he wants. Where he creates these vines and gets them to wrap around Thanos, completely enveloping them. Of course, it doesn't matter to Thanos, because Thanos has the Power Stone in his possession, so you can't overpower Thanos in any way. And he explains what the deal is, which is that it turns out that the stone that the Gardener had was the Time Stone. And that worked in his favor in his garden, because basically he could accelerate the lifespan of a certain plant and then freeze it in place in time at its most perfect moment. And what Thanos did was he used the Power Stone to basically amp up the Time Stone. So when the Gardener was using his plant-controlling abilities, they quickly accelerated way past his control and enveloped him completely, which is an interesting solution. I like that one. And Thanos gets a little bit apologetic about having to kind of dispatch him in this way, particularly in turning his own gift against him, which Thanos did actually admire. But he justifies this to himself by, saying, "Hey, I gave you a chance to just surrender the Time Stone, and you didn't give it to me, so them's the breaks." And this is the end of issue 1 of the Thanos Quest, with Thanos well on his way to omnipotence. So, issue 2, where Thanos goes to complete his quest. And I like this cover as well. I do like the symmetrical cover quite a bit. So this particular cover is pretty satisfying. Weird color. I mean, this is largely painted by the looks of it. But there's been weird color throughout these issues, which I probably should have mentioned. Looks like the colorist on this is Tom Vincent. I'm not familiar. I'm not a fan of it. It has kind of a painted watercolor something effect. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't like it too much. I think it would have looked better in 4-color, but it doesn't impede the story at all, so it's fine, really. Maybe my biggest complaint is that it doesn't really enhance the existing art in any way. It doesn't feel like it anyway. And with the 4-color stuff, you're kind of used to that. And even then, you can still find ways around it a little bit with color holds, that sort of thing. But with this painted look, you get shots like this, and even though there's some stuff going on where he's, doing some color variation it still doesn't feel, it still feels very empty. So, quick recap page where they fill us in that Thanos' whole deal, in love with death, determined to wipe out half the universe, went to go collect the 6 Infinity Stones, and now he has 3. So in this particular issue, we're going to start things off with the Collector. So this character in the MCU, of course, was introduced in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And that was in regards to an Infinity Stone. So that's cool. And the Collector is completely aware of what's been going on with Thanos. That is kind of a theme where, I mean, after the first 2, everybody he approaches is fully aware that Thanos is coming and that he's coming for their stone. So the Collector is another one of the Elders, and I think everyone we're going to meet going forward is also going to be an Elder. So Thanos puts a long-distance call in to the Collector to let him know what the deal is. Since he knows that the Collector knows that he's going to be coming, he's not going to try and overpower him, although he obviously could. But there is a risk because each Infinity Stone, of course, has its own inherent abilities, which potentially grants its owner incalculable power, just in different ways. And Thanos wants to go about this as safely as possible. Thanos is all about safety, workplace safety. So in this case, what he's going to do is he's going to offer the Collector a bargain, because of course the Collector wants anything that is rare or unique, which Thanos thinks is fucking stupid. But he tells him that he's going to be soon coming into possession of something that even the Collector will want to exchange his soul gem for. So the Collector's interested. He's going to let Thanos go about on his little quest. Thanos finishes his call and waits for a second to see if there's any kind of response, because the Collector is in control of the reality gem, which could be extremely dangerous, of course. Could kill him instantly, really. He waits for a few seconds and nothing happens. And Thanos is triumphant because this basically means he's got these next 2 stones in the bag. He kind of assumed this was the case, as he says, anybody who's obsessed with collecting minutiae is not going to have the imagination required to unlock the powers of the Reality Stone. Whereas Thanos, of course, is extremely imaginative and resourceful and fucking crazy, so totally able to unlock those powers himself. So Thanos is off to go, not to get the Collector's Stone first, he's going to go get a different one. He's after a stone held by another Elder, which is called the Runner. Not the most imaginative one, that's okay. Who starts off by destroying Thanos' Metron ship. And the Runner is also aware that Thanos was coming. In this case, it was because the Collector warned him. Because he, of course, is aware of who else has the Infinity Stones. And I guess he wanted to give Thanos a hard time. So the whole deal with the Runner is he runs super fast, and he shows this off to Thanos by outrunning his eye lasers and basically putting Thanos at his mercy. So after demonstrating his vast superiority, the Runner is not bright, by the way. He thinks being able to run faster than everybody else makes him incredibly superior. He tells Thanos to tell him why he needs the Runner's stone, why he's collecting these stones, and Thanos tells him the deal. I'm not sure how true this is, but the story he tells the Runner is that originally there was a single celestial being, which is essentially God, and created the universe and eventually got super lonely because there was no other entity like him and succumbed to despair and died. And the fragments of that original being became the Infinity Stones. And he tells him how he's going to be using the stones to go sit at Death's side as her consort. And the Runner's basically like, haha, stupid. You shouldn't have told me. Now I'm going to be the one with ultimate power. At which point Thanos kind of lets the Runner in that he's already lost. The only way that he would have won this, well, would have been by a draw if he'd used the power of the stone and gotten as far away from Thanos as possible. Because the Runner is in possession of the Space Stone. And that's why he's able to move as fast as he could. Yeah, he could already move super fucking fast. I'm sure light speed or better. If that's possible in this universe. I think it is, actually. But when he's explaining his abilities in the comic, he also says how sometimes when he was going somewhere, he arrived before he even really knew he was leaving. And it's like, yeah, that's the power of the Space Stone. And Thanos, in this case, decides to age the Runner to 1,000,000 years old. Because he is maybe not quite an immortal being, but pretty close. He explains that the Runner would have had a lifespan of about 1 billion years or so, maybe a few billion, but the last few would have been in this decrepit state. And once he's aged him up to the point where he's not even aware of what's going on, he just plucks the stone from his forehead And to make things a little more fun, he decides to further demonstrate the powers of the Time Stone, which is of course how he aged up the runner, by turning him into an infant. And this is the offer that he's going to present to the Collector. He arrives on the Collector's ship now in the possession of the Space Stone, so he doesn't even need any kind of vehicle to travel anywhere. He can just think where he wants to be and he's there. And the reason the runner is an appropriate trade is because he's also an Elder, which is the same race as the Collector and the Gardener. And it's an alternative to Thanos just destroying his ship, which is, of course, always a possibility. So in the face of getting what is potentially an equal trade to him, because an Elder is a unique thing, and something that, of course, he can mold, and something extremely potentially powerful. The Collector does accept Thanos' terms and hands over the gem that he had. Of course, he also thinks it's hilarious that the gem doesn't work. He thinks it's just a worthless hunk of polished glass. And Thanos is like, yeah, you would think that. Says to open this jewel's hidden secret requires great imagination, something a collector of trivia would be sorely lacking in. And explains that this is the reality gem and then demonstrates what the reality gem is capable of. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here, but it looks intense. And hey, we got another splash page with a little bit of drawing going on. That's all right. And then he returns reality to what it was. And afterwards, the Collector is like horrified that he had this in his possession, and it could have just destroyed everything at any given moment. So he just wants Thanos to take it away, and Thanos is like, yeah, you got it. Oh, by the way, that spell of infancy I put on the runner, yeah, that's temporary. So the runner wakes up. He's not too happy that the Collector was going to be displaying him as one of his prized possessions, and beats the living snot out of him by the looks of it. And from there, we cut to the owner of the last of the Infinity Stones. So this is going to be the Grand Master, who was, of course, featured in the Thor Ragnarok movie. Only in this case, he's not just like an old Roman emperor who's just really infatuated with gladiator contests and getting laid. These are the comics. They get a bit more conceptual. In this, the Grand Master basically just embodies his name. He is the ultimate strategist. And he's been monitoring Thanos' progress. So he's aware now that Thanos possesses every gem except his own. And he knows Thanos is coming for him, so he's got to set up some kind of gambit where he can at least, maybe not profit by this, but at least he can put their encounter more on his terms. So this, of course, is going to be a game, which Thanos knows immediately when he arrives. He says, what will the game be? And the Grandmaster is like, don't you want to know why you have to play me for the stone? And Thanos is like, nope. And the Grandmaster is going to prattle on anyway. He's going to tell him that, first of all, you can't get the stone. It's held in the stasis field. If the stone is tampered with in any way, then it will automatically teleport to somewhere random in the universe, and then the device itself will destroy itself, and you'll never see this thing again. It's also rigged up so that if anything happens to me, it will automatically teleport. And, just all these fail-safes about how he can't get the stone unless he engages in the Grandmaster's game. He's like, okay, so, like I said, what's the game? In the meantime, he places his own Infinity Stones in a stasis field, and they're going to get into it. So this is basically just going to be VR. They're in a simulation world with simulation battle suits, and they're going to fight each other for possession of the last stone, and really for possession of all of Thanos' stones. Because Thanos realizes as soon as he gets into it that this is not as the Grandmaster described it, which is, just all simulation. He understands that if he dies in the simulation, he will die in real life as well. And of course, the Grandmaster has every advantage here. He designed the terrain, he designed the suits. Thanos potentially has to take a minute to figure out how everything works. And it's a bunch of flying around and blasting. Thanos eventually gets the upper hand by blowing a hole in one of these obelisks and hiding in the crater. So when the Grandmaster comes around looking for him, Thanos is able to sneak up behind him and ambush him. And there's kind of a Mexican standoff for a second, and they both fire, and as the smoke clears, the Grandmaster stands alone because, of course, he cheated. He says he hates to have cheated, but, the stakes were too high, and Thanos was way too dangerous of an enemy. He wasn't able to take any chances. Because the Grandmaster has also been investigating the true nature of the Infinity Stones, and he came to the same conclusions as Thanos just a little bit later. So he's been watching Thanos go around collecting the stones, and after he realized what Thanos was up to, he basically let him go and do it, figuring that eventually Thanos would come to him and he'd be able to outwit him. So the finish to the game ends with Thanos being encased in this kind of silicon fungus stuff, which permeates his entire being. The Grandmaster taps the body and it falls apart, but it falls apart to reveal that this wasn't Thanos. This was actually a robot double, which is something that Thanos has used before. Actually, I think it was in his first appearance when Iron Man and like Drax, I think, eventually beat Thanos, and they find him on his ship, and it turns out, yeah, it's just like a synthetic double. So that's kind of a nice little callback, really. And of course, the Grandmaster realizes that he's been outmaneuvered in this case. And in the real world, Thanos triggers the end of the game. So the simulation falls apart around the Grandmaster, and he's effectively dead. He's brain dead anyway. And out in the real world, Thanos takes possession of the final stone. This is the Mind Stone. And he says he could have taken this stone in any number of ways now that he has the other 5 stones anyway. Like, he could have done this a million different ways. But you get the feeling this is the end of Thanos' quest, and he wants to draw it out just a little bit now that he knows that he can't really lose. So he was kind of just fucking with the Grandmaster. You get the feeling if he had done the thing where he teleported away the Mind Stone, Thanos would have just known where it was, probably from, like having the other stones. It would have called to him, something like that. And that wouldn't have been as interesting as Thanos just outmaneuvering him. So, yeah, he has all of the stones in his possession. This is a fun, kind of classic Ron Lim drawing of Thanos. I like the way he does it. Makes him just look completely crazy with his curled lip and, the shining eyes and just showing off all the teeth. And Thanos announces his victory. He says, "This is so much more than the Cosmic Cube ever gave me. All mine. I control it all. The universe belongs to me." And we get kind of a one-by-one splash page progression through the different stones, some of which aren't great. So this is the description of the Time Stone, where it's just the many stages of Thanos, I guess, from baby to, I guess, middle age to old man Thanos. So if you ever wondered what that would look like if Ron Lim drew it. We get the Space Stone. That's a little better, although probably leaving an awful lot up to the colorist. It might even be the colorist who drew most of that, really. Nice splash, though. The Mind Stone, of course. That's a bit more inventive. The big close-up on Thanos' head with all of the souls just kind of swimming around in his brain, because, of course, this means that he has access to everybody in the universe's thoughts. And the Power Stone. And the interesting thing here is, apart from just giving him limitless strength and endurance, and probably energy blasts, it also is the thing that amplifies all the other stones to make them kind of the apotheosis of their aspects. Like, on their own, like, I get the feeling that the Mind Stone would just make you telepathic, maybe like extremely telepathic, but the Mind Stone coupled with the Power Stone makes you omniscient. The Soul Stone, which gives Thanos, I guess basically, this seems to be the hardest one to explain, really, apart from the Reality Stone. But it kind of gives Thanos sway over people's intentions, their thoughts. Basically, he can make them think whatever he wants now. And it also gives him, of course, access to the underworld through the Soul Gem, which is something that will come up later. And the Reality Stone, which seems to be the toughest to represent and the toughest to describe. He's like, how can one explain the inconceivable? It's like, okay, well, we're not going to try too much. Just basically whatever Thanos wants to happen, happens. And that's kind of a nice splash too, actually. So from there, Thanos appears in Mistress Death's chamber, and he's just radiating ultimate power. And he's very happy with himself. He's like, sorry, I had to kind of trick you a little bit about my intentions. Like, yeah, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, but really this is all about becoming your equal so that I can be a fitting consort, as I should be. And my love for you has never wavered. It's still completely sincere, and never doubt that I have only your interests in mind. He says, my only wish is to be her consort and sit at her side as an equal. So, a throne is conjured for him, and he gets to sit at her side as an equal. And he's like super happy for all of a second, and sits at her and he's like, yo, we're going to be so happy, you and me. And her avatar again speaks, saying, if that's what you want, then that is what is going to happen. You bet. And Thanos takes a second and he's just like, why is he talking? Like, we're equals now. You should be talking to me. Why are you getting him to talk still? And her avatar has to explain it to Thanos that, well, you kind of got it a little wrong there. Sorry. we're not really equals now. Actually, you're incredibly far above me now. I actually am only a part of what you have now become, so it's really not my place to speak to you. So I'm just going to keep talking through the little rat guy here, if that's cool. And of course, it's not cool with Thanos, who just explodes the little rat guy, and Death here seems a little bit put out by that. Nice big gory panel too. Well done. I like how that ended up looking. And Thanos leaves and just like, oh man, did I fuck this up. I did not consider this as a possible eventuality, and there's no way really to get to where I want to be from here. So I was victorious in my goal. I was able to achieve everything I wanted, except for the reason I went out on this quest in the first place. And we end with the nice echo of the first page in the series, actually. So kind of tying it back together. Oh, and we're going to get to see how the shitty trade paperback cover was put together. Isn't that special? What do you know? It was all done in computers. All right. So that is going to do it for the Thanos Quest. So that's a really fun book. It bounces all over the galaxy. Thanos has to come up with multiple ways to achieve his goals, which is important, I think. If he's just going to every single place and fighting everybody, man, does that get old quick. But we did get one pretty good fight in here, which still had Thanos outwitting his admittedly stupid opponent. But if it was just a slugfest, I think that would be disappointing. It was enough to show that he could go toe-to-toe with Champion, or at least, inflict a bit of damage, and then go, okay, now to trick him the rest of the way. That's much more satisfying. And the storyline as a whole is much more satisfying than, say, if Thanos had found the Infinity Gauntlet. That would have sucked, where he's just searching for the one item. This whole thing where he's just, going on like a pilgrimage is way, way better. And just kind of sends a flair that, hey, you know what? Jim Starlin's back, and Cosmic Space Adventures, they're coming back with me. So very cool book. So next time, we're going to go and take a look at, you guessed it, Infinity Gauntlet #1. Written by Jim Starlin, drawn by George Perez. That's going to be kind of awesome. But for this one anyway, that's going to do it. So thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notifications so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over and subscribe on my Patreon. It gives you early access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can join the Blood Force Discord server. But that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.